Okay, we're ready to get going. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Frontline Service Through Data-Driven Insights for Banks and Credit Unions. My name's Craig, and this webinar is presented by Fortimize, a Salesforce consulting partner focused exclusively on the financial services industry. Joining me today is Darcy Rippon, Fortimize's Banking and Lending Practice Director. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Darcy?
Hey, Craig. Yeah, as you said, my name is Darcy Rippon. I am the Banking Practice Director here at Fortimize. Prior to joining Fortimize, I led the strategic initiative at a community bank here in Massachusetts, implementing Salesforce with the data integration across multiple business lines from top down, so strategic initiative all the way through driving adoption of the platform.
Great. It's great to have you here, Darcy. Also hosting today is Michael Reed, banking expert from Salesforce. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today from your home offices, kitchens, bedrooms, closets, or wherever you're joining from. We appreciate the attendance given the challenges presented to us today. My name is Michael Reed, and I'm a regional manager at Salesforce within our financial services vertical. I currently manage an extraordinary team of account executives that are aligned to the financial service organizations like yours. Together, we share a common goal of helping you achieve customer success with digital transformation. A little bit about myself. Prior to joining Salesforce, like many of my peers, I came from the financial services industry. More specifically, various leadership roles I held across global, regional, private, and community banks over the course of about 15 years. So I'm excited to be sharing some of my thoughts alongside Darcy today, sharing the perspective of being in your shoes as a banker and now as an employee at Salesforce. Thanks, Craig.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Michael. Should you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit these questions through the panel in the Zoom platform, and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. Awesome. Over to you to kick us off, Darcy.
All right. So like Mike touched on a little bit, in light of our current environment, and I don't want to ignore what we're all experiencing right now and how it's impacting all of us, both professionally and personally. What I'm hearing in my network of banking colleagues, and I'm sure you're hearing it too, Mike, banks are behind the curve on shoring up technical debt. I experienced it last week with some of my customers scrambling to enable their employees to work remotely. And not just at their backup remote site, but at their homes, trying to get communications out to their customers on the customer options and how they can help them. And these banks are handcuffed because they've put some of these technology initiatives on the back burner. So I'm hopeful that when we all come out of this on the other side, what we'll see is banks strengthening their business continuity plans, looking to invest in technology and helping to evolve their strategies. With all of that said, this quote is extremely intriguing to me because even before everything happened a couple weeks ago, looking at, this 85% of enterprises being slowed down by integration challenges. And I think you and I both experienced it in our previous lives as bankers, Mike. Integration probably remains the task that takes the highest level of effort. And most core banking providers are slow to partner up and help banks get access to their data to surface it in a holistic platform. So what are data silos and how do they impact your employees? Well, a data silo is a term that's coined to describe disparate, disconnected systems within an organization. So if you think about the daily experience when you're a frontline employee, how many systems do these team members need to touch in order to do their job? Is it 5 or is it 10? We have one bank that we're working with now that we identified 52 separate systems for some of these processes. That's a phenomenal amount of time and effort to just get their job done. So when you say you're operating in a data silo, that means that the data in one system is inaccessible and unactionable. Mike, I'm sure you've experienced this as well.
Yeah, totally have experienced this. One thing that comes to mind is really the process of a referral, right? It seems simple, should be simple, but when you have different divisions within a bank or credit union, whether that's retail, lending, commercial, business development, marketing, call center, online, online, pretty critical one right now. Internal referrals, they're only as good as the information and details they include. So most banks and credit unions, they lack the technology or sufficient technology or workflows to give that banker what they need, the knowledge they need to understand the prospect prior to outreach. So yes, there's lots of different systems, but without that 360-degree view, it can be frustrating, right? For the customer, member, or prospect, frustrating for the employee when that access is limited. You resort to your shared drive, right? Maybe an Excel sheet or a workbook or an email, or even worse, the dreaded data in core, right? That we may get a little bit more into in a little bit, but all of which where the data might be incomplete, stale, bad, or even contradicting each other in different systems. So yeah, without that 360 view of the prospect being surfaced, all these siloed systems, you need that brought to one place. You'll miss out on those critical details that'll really allow you to be effective across that workflow of the referral and across your organization. Referrals for me, I always thought, I wanted to bring forward this data to understand who are we dealing with, right? And I think that's part of that impact is you don't really understand, are they existing? Are they new right out of the gate? Are they part of a household that already exists or already has a relationship with the bank or credit union? A lot of banks have VIP programs. I know at my most recent one we did, and it was really important to understand if that referral is coming from a VIP. White glove service always important, but the impact and who you may have deal with that referral becomes very important. So many of our community banks and credit unions offer benefits to local heroes and neighborhood champions as well. I think about those programs of a referral coming through, and shouldn't we already know some of that information, right? And if that information wasn't part of the referral process, part of another siloed data, how might that change the course of action on that lending referral, for example?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I remember the statistic of a very large number of referrals were dropped into SharePoint, and at no point could you tell if they were assigned to somebody, followed up on, if there was an outcome, a positive outcome or a negative outcome. We had stories where, a person might respond that they don't want or don't believe in HELOCs, but they walk into another branch or they call into the call center and they're offered another HELOC. That kind of experience has a negative impact for the customer, but then that employee that offered the second or third HELOC that was already declined 2 times before it, they start to feel a little gun shy when they're looking at trying to offer new products and services.
Yeah, that call center experience is real, right? Not having access to that information and asking a question that might be a bit of a sore subject may lead to attrition of a great deposit customer, right? So absolutely.
So then how do we go about breaking down those silos? Mike, at a high level, we think about what that means. When you break down a silo, you've found a way to surface the data, right? So we could say that the answer to breaking down the silo is easy, but the process itself is cumbersome. As we've experienced most recently with our customers, sometimes, you create this enterprise integration strategy, you lay this foundation for a holistic view of the customer. You're attempting to aggregate data from all of these systems of record within your organization and surfacing it, but getting these core providers to play nice, to work with the banks and to work with the integration partners is really a challenge. And that's where we see a lot of that level of effort being consumed within our integration strategy.
Yeah, Darcy, breaking down those silos, and how that really, the ability to bring everything together is so helpful, right? Customers, members, they expect resolution at initial point of contact, and they know they can get it, right? They can go to banks that can provide this today in credit unions. There's, bringing everything together to one point. There's no longer that need to find the one person in that hard to reach department to answer that specific question, right? You can sort of bring that information to the forefront. Or the need to search multiple databases while logging in and having passcodes for other systems, to answer what a member or customer expects us to know, really in a prompt manner. That's more the industry standard, right? We should have this answer at our fingertips. But I believe trust is built when a customer or member feels like they're known as well, right? I've been a member since 1972. We should know this. We should have historical info from multiple sources that can help us retain and deepen those loyal customer and member relationships, by being able to reference past interactions and conversations. So I think bringing this data together really gives us the power to be the trusted advisor, allowing us to make real-time decisions and swap out that time searching for answers and exchange that for time deepening relationships real time with customers and clients.
Right. It's what I always say for my banking customers is that when you create that efficiency, you free up time for doing what your bankers do best, which is serve your customers.
Absolutely.
So then the question I get asked quite often is, how is this attainable to a community bank or a credit union? When you think about, the smaller sub $10 billion banks, the credit unions with that smaller footprint, that real community regional feel, one of the questions is, we don't have resources, we don't have programmers and people available to just jump on this project and create this data integration. I hear a lot of banks, and I'm sure you've felt it in your previous organizations, where they just feel they're not ready to take that first step.
Yeah, Darcy, I think, the biggest point, whether at the global banks that I worked at or the smaller banks, really everyone's challenging that status quo, right? And I think you need to make it attainable by thinking about process improvement, right? Consider what slow or no transformation might mean to your bank or credit union. It's all relative. I'd make it more attainable and have made it more attainable by building that conversation internally and compiling a list of what are those frustrating or broken workflows, also known as use cases, that might help you understand the need and direction to follow to start tackling this transformation. Again, how do you make it attainable? Speak with us, right? Speak with the industry experts at Salesforce and Fortimize to understand more. But I think among the most painful and what holds a lot back is getting stuck in that status quo by living by the excuses, right? And there's plenty.
Absolutely.
We need a new core platform, right? That comes up a lot. We need to clean up our data first. Time, priorities, we don't have those. We have other competing priorities. It costs too much. Again, lots of excuses out there, but I'd say every core brings its own frustrations. Spending time with an old antiquated core platform or database alone isn't the most efficient way to improve accuracy of data or update your data. And I'd make that really the first step in integrating a CRM by leveraging an experienced integration partner like Fortimize to help prepare, guide that cleanup process, and ultimately integrate the data. Otherwise, you might end up doing it twice, right? Or again in a few years when, again, that data is outdated.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's often an excuse that we do hear, or a reason that people push back, is that data just isn't ready. We have to clean up the data first. One way to overcome that excuse internally is that you can leverage the platform in Salesforce to provide that lens, right? To give your frontline teams the ability to identify dirty data and then wrap a process around it by which you can actually expedite the approvals and the cleanup. We see oftentimes, you might have a duplicate relationship within the core banking system, and the process by which you have to go through and merge those, who has to approve it, who has to double check it. Salesforce and Financial Services Cloud with the data integration actually gives you the ability to wrap that process so that your frontline team can actually see their efforts are working.
Darcy, I want to hit on the time and priorities, right? Like we don't have the time. We have other priorities going on right now. Having that ability to have been in the shoes of those listening on the call right now, I look at those past strategic plans that I had, and I wish I could go back and have not thought about digital transformation as a strategic initiative, right? As its own priority, but instead really align Salesforce and a great partner around how can I drive the strategic initiatives that I have already in place more swiftly and efficiently by sort of pairing it with Salesforce and an implementation partner. And I am 100% sure that success would have happened at a faster pace had we just thought of it in a little bit of a different manner.
Right. And, I guess you put your digital transformation in a silo in your strategic plan, right? Instead of breaking it up, see what I did there? Instead of breaking it up across multiple initiatives in the organization and having it be one of the supporting initiatives for all of the other initiatives across the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, we think about making it attainable. I don't want to avoid this one because I think a lot of us on the line may say, as I did, how is Salesforce going to get down to my cost, right? Cost should really be removed from the equation. It's a necessary evil. It needs to be discussed, but it shouldn't get in the way, and it doesn't get in the way when you really start to understand the value that Salesforce and a strong implementation partner can bring, like Fortimize. And I believe it's easier to measure the cost of not transforming your bank or credit union with Salesforce, like customer member attrition, right? Think about those VIPs or a larger audience like millennials. Competitors lead to close time, right? It's increasing. You can get a small business loan over a cup of coffee. It's approved before you're done.
Right.
The ability to improve workflow so that you can avoid operational losses. Obviously leveraging the data-driven insights. You mentioned actionable data, right? And then automate and improve workflows with that information. And then I think the last point for me is, what's a real measurable way to transform a bank? I think ultimately shifting, if you can imagine in your head, that administrative body of employees, right? Take 10 to 30% of that heavy administrative employee base and shift that over to customer member facing. If you really move to shift of 10 to 30% of your staff from heads down, hands down.
Look at data entry, redundancies.
Yeah, that can easily be measured in dollars and cents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the arguments again that we hear at times is that, creating and executing these kind of strategies is overwhelming to these community banks and credit unions. I think they're looking at trying to undertake an entire program within a finite project. My advice is to think about that minimum viable product needed to make a difference and to build and evolve based on that so that you can actually, achieve complexities in the processes over a period of time, over a program roadmap. So it's that, crawl, walk, run approach where we're trying to lay that foundation and then iterate and innovate over time.
Absolutely.
So, you've touched on this a little bit throughout our discussion today, but, when you think about the outcomes for an organization, for a bank or a credit union, I tend to think of it as using that surface data to achieve scalable growth. The ability for those frontline employees to quickly identify the white space and wallet share, and then initiate, like you said, those cross-business referrals. But you touched a little bit on administrative cost and process improvement.
Yeah, I would even add to that list a little bit. We talked a little bit about customer member retention, right? The retention of a customer. It takes a lot to bring someone on, but retention is just as important. And then that satisfaction level. Same with employees, retention and satisfaction. I think you mentioned improved workflows, avoid those redundancies in the workplace. But ultimately I get it. It's a competitive industry. Digital transformation with enhanced access to data that's actionable, right? It's going to improve internal workflows. For me, that has a clear line to 3 measurable outcomes, which would be acquisition of new relationships, deepening of existing relationships, and 3, improved internal and external partnerships that allow you to multiply the impact of your organization.
Oh, I like that a lot. You touched a little bit on that employee experience or employee retention. I know when my bank did their business value case based on our call center with Salesforce, one of the line items that Salesforce came back to us with was the cost of employee attrition and turnover within the call center. And I think it's one of those hidden outcomes that you may or may not in your organization put a cost around, but being able to acquire and retain good talent, product knowledge, process knowledge, by giving those employees the tools to really do what they do well. A lot of times we see when we go into banks, the banks are doing amazing work in spite of themselves and in spite of their technology. And when you think about, giving those employees that tool to really increase their own efficiency and serve their customers or members better than they already are, they feel valued. They feel like the bank or the credit union has invested in their own employee experience.
Without a doubt.
So where do you start? You and I have both gone through this process as bankers, and I think you have great insight because you started from the business side where I started from the technology side. Who would you say needs to be in that conversation?
Yeah, great question. I would think you'd want to pull in, I'd identify the key workflows, right, by department. And I'd start to think about building a team to help lead the initiative, right? You definitely need an executive sponsor, someone who can be a voice across the executive management team to resonate and bounce off ideas. But you also need senior management in different departments within the bank. Even though you might not be deploying across the whole organization or a credit union right out of the gate, that's necessary. You need representation from each department, each channel. And then I'd say, you can't count out those first line resources that can speak to those struggles, right? The ones that can tell you firsthand, I have a hard time, fulfilling this request for my customer, my member. These are my day-to-day struggles with interactions with customers and members. And that would involve, I think, primarily retail folks, lenders, call center branch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we see and one of the things we caution against is that this is not just an IT conversation. While you need your information technology teams to be involved, it's not just an IT initiative. This is a business initiative. Some of the other people I think of are marketing and operations because they're going to access and consume that data as well.
Yeah, I think a good starting place as well, Darcy, is that look at your strategic plan, right? I mentioned this before, but this is a plan that starts obviously at different times for banks, but primarily around the third quarter of the year for the next year. But dust off that strategic plan now, right? Start to take a look in that and say, how can I align Salesforce within this? And then sort of engage those strategic initiative owners around a strategy that could include digital transformation.
Absolutely. We talk about when to start. I think in light of the current environment, now is probably the best time, really encouraging everyone to think about it as taking that first step. And you don't have to dive both feet in right away, but focus on, your primary pain points, your minimum viable products, and start looking at, what can you solve quickly and easily? And then again, it's that foundation so that once you have started, you can actually keep going because you gain momentum. I think that's one of the things that really sparked the work that I did at my organization is that once we ended up gaining traction the momentum itself pushed through because people were starting to see the power of the platform to solve so many of their business problems.
Yeah, I think that's a concern, Darcy, up front is adoption, right? Who will use it? And I think certainly a strategic plan and a strong partner to help you understand how to engage people through the process and understand where the ownership and where the learning needs to occur very early is an important step.
Right. And I think about all the questions that I've gotten over the last year and a half, and I would encourage banks and credit unions who are thinking about undertaking this initiative to start asking questions, to reach out to Salesforce, to reach out to Fortimize. What are the integration tools? What does an integration strategy look like? Who should be doing this? Who are the key stakeholders? You can start those conversations by trying to get your questions answered. And we're more than happy to help really coming in and asking the hard questions. You've experienced it. What is the pain in the process? What are we trying to solve for? And aligning those to that strategy at the bank.
Absolutely.
Awesome. That brings us to the Q&A portion of the webinar. We did get a couple questions. The first one, how can I quickly deliver integration outcomes to my team who's working from home? And is that even possible?
Well, that's an interesting question. Given the immediate need, we can't, it's not something that you can just flip a switch and turn on. We do have the ability to deliver a fast track with an integration, depending on what kind of data and reporting you can get out of your core. But really, again, that level of effort and being mindful of all of the different, moving pieces with the IT infrastructure, spinning up an instance. Depending on how long this current environment lasts, we typically see a fast track being delivered anywhere from 6 weeks if you have access to your data quickly, or lasting as long as 3 months. So, if you really want to do this, reach out to us. We can talk about the strategy behind it.
And Darcy, just to add to that, while gaining information right now is definitely might be easier, I think, to jump on, a webinar like this and learn. There are a lot of things that we're doing just in the meantime to help that don't require that immediate integration, to help you collaborate with employees, to give you that and customers, members. Like let's make sure that you can stay connected during this time. And there are yes, free services available from Salesforce that can help you achieve these goals at this time. We definitely want to help our customers and prospects get through this.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing when I saw Mark Benioff announce the services that they're offering to customers and prospects to help everybody bridge the gap over the next few weeks. Again, Salesforce is an amazing organization. So proud to partner with them.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people come together. That's fantastic. Our last question, we're ramping on our digital strategy. What's the quickest and easiest way to deliver an integration?
I think we lay that digital foundation, right? So I think it, again, starts with a conversation, aligning it to your strategic initiatives, getting that minimum viable product up and running, and think about not having to solve for everything all at once, but really what pain in the process can we solve for at this point in time, to lay that foundation that will allow you to scale your growth.
Excellent. Yeah. Those are all of our questions for today. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to the experts. We'll be following up with an email on their contact info. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys.